Hey everyone!
Hey, we're back.
We are very much back. I am thrilled to be going live this week on this fine Thursday with the wonderfully talented Leslie Nicole. Welcome back, Leslie.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Thank you for hosting this. What a
It's
great
our,
opportunity.
it's our pleasure. I think this should be a really fun session. Before we jump in, can everyone just confirm, can you see and hear us okay in the comments? We're going to give it just a few minutes because we can see tons of people still showing up today. So just let us know if you can see and hear us. That would be reassuring, right, Leslie?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, we're starting to see lots of yeses. That's fantastic. So what I would say before we jump in is we just wanted to apologize in person like this for technical issues last time. Unfortunately, it wasn't on our side per se. It was with the streaming services, and every single streaming service around the world right now seems to be getting hammered because there's so many people at home. There's so many more live events. And so this is something we've seen across the board happening to virtually every friend we have in the industry doing live streams. So we do apologize that we had to delay this session, but I'm so grateful that everyone's joined us for this rescheduled session today, and super grateful to you as well, Leslie, for coming back on with us.
I'm seeing some comments here, Tom, that I'm looking pretty pixelated.
I think often this happens even when things work. Often that straightens out after just a few minutes. And especially when people screen share, that can often go away. But yeah, it's the magic of live streaming. It's never 100% perfect, but
yeah,
it should be pretty
I'm
good,
over
I think.
here, in the country of France, so we don't have the greatest internet connection.
Yeah, there you go. Leslie looks good now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, if we got any wood around us, just touch wood right now, because we're hoping it's going to be a smooth live stream for all of you. But yeah, the team are on hand in the comments if you need anything at all. Leslie, what are you going to be sharing with us today?
Okay, well, I know this is a real mixed crowd. Some of you are really experienced with textures. Some of you are beginners. So I didn't want to go too beginner because the advanced people would be bored, and I didn't want to go too fast because I'll lose the beginning texture people. So it's going to be a little bit of a combination of both. If you were here last time, it's going to be somewhat the same. I'm going to start out with some slow things, some concepts of using textures. I will take it slow for kind of opening and placing your textures, using layer masks, blend modes, but I will get into some more advanced things later on, more advanced blend modes. Hopefully we're going to get to using multiple textures. For those of you who are total beginners, some of this might get to be a little too much for you. So don't worry about it. My goal today is to give you kind of an overview of what's possible. So if you're a little confused later on, just watch it again, hit pause, and hopefully I'll give you enough information here that you'll know what you need to study more on.
I love it. I mean, I think it's basically going to be an absolute texture fest today. Everything you could want to know about textures covered in one session. And perfect. I can see in the comments we have some people. Troy's experienced with textures. I know we got some beginners out there as well. We have said in the comments, but if anyone is experiencing some minor audio or video issues, definitely look at the bottom left of this live stream and click Get Audio Video Help. That is a fantastic fix if maybe your local internet's struggling as well. So we hope that helps. I think for the majority of people, it looks like it's all running smooth. So Leslie, would you be able to jump in and share your screen?
Yeah, before I start, I want to just ask people real quick. I'm curious, what software are you using for your texture work? We're going to be using Photoshop. I'm going to be using Photoshop today, but there are a lot of options out there, including some great mobile apps. And I'm kind of curious to hear what you're using today or these days.
So what do you think some of the most common ones
Photoshop
are?
Elements, Photoshop. Some people might be using GIMP. I don't know. That's possible. There's On1 has texture stuff. There's Topaz Labs. Someone put iColorama there. That's a mobile app. Procreate. I've seen some fantastic artwork coming out of people using Procreate. Photoshop, Lumia. Oh, and there's also Affinity. Someone did Affinity, Topaz. So there's a lot of different software out there that you can use textures with. The main thing is, anything that uses layers, blend modes, preferably layer masks. Today we're using Photoshop, but just take these ideas and apply them to your own software.
So I can see a bunch of people have been commenting. I actually just set a poll up. So if you click on polls below this live stream, you can vote what software you're using. It would be really interesting to see what the winner is.
Cool. I'm going to vote too.
I mean, I'm Photoshop personally. I love Photoshop.
Me too. I mean, I've been using Photoshop since Photoshop 2.0, not
Wow.
CS2, 2.0.
That's impressive.
That places my age a bit there.
I think maybe I was like Photoshop 7 or something.
Yeah. So I was using Photoshop. There were no layers. There was no, you had selections and a pen tool, and that was it. And you had channels. You had channels. You just save everything as channels.
I started using PaintShop Pro. That's how far back I go with that. Yeah. Amazing. So shall we jump into Photoshop? Yeah. But I know what you're saying, Leslie. A lot of the techniques are going to be, pretty ubiquitous across all the software. Doesn't matter what you're using. As long as it's got layers and blend modes, you can apply the same techniques. Yeah.
Okay, great. Here we go.
Oh, look at that, by the way. Over 3/4 of people in Photoshop and most of the rest in Elements as well.
I mean, Photoshop is just so powerful. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it nice to hang with everyone today, Leslie?
Oh,
well, we're all stuck at home. Look at how active everyone is in the comments as well. So we really appreciate all of you being here with us.
Okay, so here we go. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
I'm in Lightroom right now. Before I get started, I wanted to just also say, I'm often asked by people, I think probably most of you understand what textures are, but I do get asked sometimes, are your textures compatible with my version of Photoshop? Or, are they filters? Are they actions? And textures are just basically image files. They work with any software that works with layers and layer masks, like we just said, and blend modes.
Yep.
So it's compatible with all versions of, textures are compatible with all versions of Photoshop's Elements, etc. All right. So what are some of the ways you can use textures with your photography? I'm going to do a quick overview here before we jump into a demonstration. All right. So one of the most basic ways is to replace a background. This is an Akelteki stallion I photographed from the named Chaname from the Chevaux du Léon stables. And I was able to just get a quick snapshot of him. So I replaced the background with, this is also a texture from, I think, the textures one. So that's just basically, swap background, cut out image, swap background. You can also use textures as a background for design, a more design photograph. These are actually photographs of a magnolia that I cut out and used the Photoshop pattern scatter on top of a texture.
Beautiful. That background with the horse, by the way, was stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Added so much to the photo.
Portrait. But when we're talking about textured photography, we're usually talking about using textures in a way that it blends with your photograph. It's not just cutting out. You're not making a cutout of your image and sticking on top of a texture. You're blending it so it interacts with the photograph, and I'll get into that soon. So this is my original image of that textured image. And it was photographed indoors. I think I just put a piece of white foam core. Let me open that up.
Oh, so you didn't extract that? That's just incredibly well lit white background.
Yeah, it's just a white lit. I mean, this was my raw photograph.
Yep.
And then I do kind of basic edits in Lightroom. And then this is a already processed image, but I always use the Topaz Labs filters. This one I use detail. I usually use clarity. Okay, I'm going to open this up in Photoshop now. All right, let me go and open up my textures. Let's get into textures 1. I'm going to be using a texture from the Like Textures Volume 1 collection. I think that's in my second folder. Yes. I'm going to be trying this, using this texture Sentier Forestier, which is French for forest path.
How long have you lived in France for, Leslie?
Gosh, it's been about 10 years now.
Beautiful country, though.
Okay, I'm going to rotate this to vertical. So rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. Now, one of the questions we had was, how do I choose my textures? And that's kind of the beauty of textures, is just trying things. You will, as you use textures more, 1, you'll get a feeling for what works, and 2, your own vision will emerge. Like the texture I choose is going to be different than the texture you choose. So it's a lot of playing. It's a lot of playing around, and not everything's going to work. Believe me, I have a lot of images where the texture it didn't work. So part of texture work is just playing around. Okay, I'm going to stop real quick. Like I said last time, I know a lot of people like to do a file place embedded when they place textures, but I like working in tabs. It works better for me. I have other reasons why I like to do that, but I'm not going to get into it right now. I just like working in tabs, which you can go, if you do Window, Arrange, Consolidate all the tabs, that'll give you tabs. And with the Move tool selected, that's the top tool here. It looks like the crossed arrows. I'm just going to grab it, drag it over to my image, hold down Shift, and drop it on there. You hold down Shift because it centers the texture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my texture is bigger than my image, so I'm going to resize it. So Command or Control T, and now I'm going to do Command or Control 0, so I can see all of my bounding backs around my texture. Okay.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Right.
And we talked about this recently, Leslie, how Photoshop, with a recent update, it now doesn't it constrains the proportions.
Yeah,
you know how you used to have to hold
Shift.
That.
So
doesn't
now
it?
that I'm
yeah.
now that I'm getting that, and I have to hold down Shift here to get it to fit exactly the way I want it to. And hit Enter. Okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to back up real quick. I want to show you guys a fun trick. I'm going to go back to my texture. I'm going to do Command Option I, which I believe in PC is Control Alt I, which brings up the image size dialog box. Now, here's a fun trick. Go up to Window, go down to the bottom here, and find the image that you want, your target image. So my flower image in this case. And select that. And this will automatically size it to fit exactly your target document.
That's useful.
Now I'm going to drag that over, holding out Shift again. Now it's perfectly resized. I'm going to get rid of the other one. So that's another way to size your textures before you place them, if you know you want it to be exactly sized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually make my textures into smart objects because it's not very usual that I resize them. All right, I'm going to switch this blend mode to multiply, and then I'm going to tell you why. So like I said before, texture work is all about blend modes. I'm going to zoom that in a little bit here. So that's normal. You don't see anything. Multiply, and that texture is now blending with the flower image. And why did I choose multiply? I made a little graphic here on the different blend modes in Photoshop and what you'd be using in most with photography. Can you see here that they're kind of grouped?
Yeah,
I got this by, here's the blend mode, the multiply, all that's down here, okay? So Photoshop kind of groups these blend modes into what they do. So this first group, well, the very first grouping is normal and dissolve, and you're never going to use dissolve on Photoshop on photographs. At least it's pretty.
It's not the
unlikely.
most attractive, is it? Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used dissolve.
No.
In I don't know how many years. So the next grouping are what are the darken blend modes, and the one that you're going to be using the most is multiply. Sometimes linear burn, but that will darken. It'll basically cover up anything that's white. The next grouping, I'm going to show you some examples later on these two, is lighten. So this will be a lighten blend modes. The next grouping with the overlay soft light are the contrast saturation. And I'm going to leave it there for now and come back to that. But the ones you're going to use the most are multiply, screen, overlay, and soft light.
I love it. And then, Leslie, if you've seen with things like photo manipulation, the screen blend mode is used so often. So if someone wanted to use Photoshop to have flames or smoke coming into an image, you would take a photo where the background behind the fire or the smoke was black. You just apply a screen blend mode, and then it would look like the fire or the smoke or whatever effect was actually floating over your image.
Yeah, screen has some really surprising results. I have one example here. With textures, like what's really interesting, if there's a black texture with some like scratches in it, if you apply the black texture and select screen, all you'll see is the scratches. The black will just totally disappear.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great use.
Okay, I'm going to close up my texture now, so we don't need that anymore. And don't save, because you don't want to accidentally resize your original texture. All right, so we've got this one more going on. That's pretty good. But let me zoom in here a little bit. I'm doing Command plus here to zoom in. Control plus on PC.
By the way, everyone watching live, let me know. Let me know about the volume on my side. It sounds like my mic might be coming in a little bit hot, so I'm going to turn it down and let me know if this sounds a bit better for you.
Tom, can you
Sorry,
speak
go
again?
ahead, Leslie.
That's good, yeah.
Yep. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's almost too light for me, but I don't know how the rest of the audience feels.
Okay, hopefully that's a happy medium now.
Okay, so here we are. We have our texture. I'm going to back up here a little bit and talk more about that blend mode. So basically, when you have a white background or a really light background, you're probably going to be using multiply. Let me show you what happens if you try to use something else. Like if I try to use screen, you can't lighten. So that doesn't really work. Overlay, that doesn't really work. Soft light, because these are blend modes that lighten the image. You can't lighten white. So they don't really work unless there's some kind of tone back there. All right, so here we are. So it's looking pretty good, but let's zoom in a little bit. And my flower is looking kind of dirty. I don't like that too much. Let me zoom in. So now we're going to use a layer mask to take some of that texture off where we don't want it to be. And I know that some people use the eraser. Don't do that. You don't want to use the eraser because that's a destructive way to edit. It means if you make an edit and you decide later on that you don't like it, you got to start all over again. So we're going to do a non-destructive edit, which is use a layer mask. So if I go down to the bottom of the layer panel here, and there's this kind of white rectangle with a black circle in it, I'm going to click that. Okay, so anything I do with that layer mask selected in the layer, anything I do with black is the same as if I'm using the eraser. So I'm going to choose the brush tool here, brush, get a big soft brush, which I probably still over there, the soft round brush. I'm going to enlarge that a bit using my bracket, the right bracket on the keyboard. And you want to start out with a very low opacity. I'm going to do 20% here. You just hit 2 on the keyboard, it takes it to 20%. So
when you've got a brush open, if you click 2 or 3 or 4, it jumps to that level of opacity.
20, 30. So 2 is 20, 3 is 30, etc.
Can you believe I've used Photoshop most of my life and I didn't know that, Leslie?
Really? All
I feel
right.
like that's a real basic, and I find this all the time. I know quite a few advanced techniques within Photoshop, but because I'm self-taught, I never went and learned all the basics properly. And so always on these sessions, there will be one thing where I'm like, oh, wow, I never knew that.
Well, I'm still learning things too. And what happens too is that, you learn Photoshop way back when, and how many of us actually stop and learn every single new feature of every release, So sometimes there's new features that come out that we didn't know about. And I mean, Photoshop is very complex in the different ways you can do things, the shortcuts. So I'm learning things all the time as well.
What a time saver. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And I
great.
can see there's several people in the comments who are like, me neither. I didn't know that.
And if you actually want to do like something like 5, you have to do like, 0, 5.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, back to 20. Okay, so I'm starting here. So I don't want my, the white of the flower to be real dirty. And I'm going to maybe come up here and get some of that grid off of here too. But I'm not doing like, I don't want to take 100% off because it's going to look really weird if I take it 100% off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do the world's best mask right now because I don't want to take up a lot of time on that. But let me back out by doing command left bracket, command minus rather. Well, that's already looking a lot better. Let me turn off my mask for a minute. You do that by hitting shift and hitting the layer mask. So that's already a lot better. Okay.
Yeah, it really kind of punches that out more.
Yeah. I find that, if you clean those highlights, you're going to get an image with a lot more depth. And this is pretty good. I like this. I think that the stem is blending in pretty well. I think I might want to give it a little bit of a highlight kick on the top part of the stem. So I'm making my brush smaller with the left bracket key. And I'm going to switch. No, I'm still in the black. Okay. I'm just going to do that maybe 10%. Let's see what happens there. Maybe I think it needs 20. I just want to lighten that a tiny bit. Maybe brighten that a little bit too. I'm going to go 3 on that, 30%. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so everyone with me now on placing the layer, blend mode, layer mask. You guys following on that?
Yep, definitely. And everyone's
Great.
loving the keyboard shortcut as well.
All right. So now we're going to get a little more advanced here. What if I want to change my texture a little bit? I want to make it a little bit lighter. So I never ever do. I just blanked out for a minute here. On my adjustment layers, I never do it direct. I never do an adjustment directly on a layer. I always use an adjustment layer. So come down here to this yin yang sign on the layers panel here, and I'm going to do a levels thing here. So let's say I want to make it lighter, but I only want it to affect my texture. So if I want it to only affect the texture, I need to use a clipping mask. I want to clip that adjustment only to my texture. There's several ways to do that. The first one I'm going to do, since I'm already right here between this on the layer here, I'm going to hold down my Option key, it'd be Alt on PC, and I'm going to hover between the adjustment layer and the texture layer until I get a little square with a downward pointed arrow and click. And now I have a little arrow there next to the adjustment layer, which means it's clipped. Now if I make adjustments, it's mostly to the texture. There is some effect on the flower because it's blended. That's especially important for like if you want to do a hue saturation adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to apply that clipping mask a different way. I'm going to go up here to my properties panel right here. And there's at the bottom of the properties panel, there's a square with a downward pointed arrow. I'm going to click that. So that's a different way to do a clipping mask. So let's say I wanted to change the hue and saturation of my texture. Now I can change in that flowers remain red.
And you can really stack these things
pretty
infinitely, can't you? There's no limit. You can just keep adding more and more adjustments and play with colors and levels in a non-destructive way.
I'm not really looking to change my color on this one, but I did want to kind of brighten it a little bit. Okay, we're going to go do something a little more advanced real quick. From what I know, knowing from how I edited this before, I kind of want to do a little bit of a brightening overall in the center part. So I'm going to do a burn dodge layer now. Okay, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to go down here to my flower layer. Click plus to get another layer. And shift delete. That brings up the fill dialog box. And choose 50% gray here. Instead of foreground color, choose 50% gray. We're going to fill it with that. And now I'm going to change it to overlay. And what happens here is overlay blend mode is a contrast and saturation blending mode. And it doesn't see 50% gray. Why do I put 50% gray? It just makes it easier to see the edits. I'm going to show you in a minute here why that's important. Now I'm going to select a brush, soft brush again. I'm going to make it real big. So I'm using my right bracket key and I'm going to zoom that brush way big. And I have my black selected in my foreground tool here. I'm going to select pretty low opacity. I'm going to do 2. Oh, wait a minute. I want to lighten this. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to paint with white now because white will lighten. And I'm going to do X to swap my foreground and background colors. Okay.
Which is probably one of my most used shortcuts, that X, switching of the black and the white foreground and background.
So I'm just doing a little, I went too far there, a little bit of lightening here. So why did I fill that with gray? Because it's easier to see my edits. You can do this on a clear layer. You don't have to fill this. In fact, I used to do that. I used to just do, here, let me get back to this. You could just use a clear layer with overlay. But it's harder number one, it's harder to see the edits you've done. And number 2, you end up looking at this layer going, what is that? So I'd have to always write, burn dodge layer. But with gray, this 50% gray, it doesn't see the gray and you can see your edits better. And you look at that and you go, oh, that's a burn dodge layer.
Yep.
Okay. And you could do anything on this. You could make something darker. If I do X and go back to black, I could, let's say I want to make that darker. I don't, but let's just say I did. I'm going to do Command C on that. That's a burn dodge layer. And you use that a lot. I mean, when I was developing photographs back in analog days in the darkroom, everyone had their burn dodge kit. It was really important. Okay, let's see.
It's actually one of my favorite techniques, Leslie. I've used this so many times with the dodge burn layer. And I'm the same. I fill it with 50% gray. I just kind of like the control that gives. But it feels like magic. Like often you can really bring a photo to life with just a few extra highlights and shadows.
Absolutely. Let's see now. What was I going to do next? I kind of lost my train of thought here. Sorry, guys.
That's right. So yeah, so we were masking layers and then dodge and burning.
Okay. All right. So we're kind of in a good place here. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to come back to this later on. Any questions so far?
No, I think everyone's just really enjoying it. To be honest.
I know what I wanted to tell you guys. I actually, because I do that so often, I created my own action. So I can just do burn dodge layer, boom. So that's a nice, that'd be a nice thing to create an action for. All right, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to kind of do some a little bit more overview stuff and talk some more about blend modes. And then I'm going to come back to this image and we're going to try and work with multiple layers. So I'm hoping we have time for all of this.
I think we do. And if you're happy to, provide that, the fact we've rescheduled, we want to really pack in as much value as possible. So I'm sure everyone's ready for everything that you want to demonstrate today, Leslie.
Great. Oh, you know what? And while I'm here and we're talking about this, kind of this basic layers and layer modes, someone had a question last time about, I think it was Liz had a question about the importance, is it important the layer order? And it is, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to duplicate this. So image duplicate. Let's duplicate it. So for now, I'm just going to get rid of, I'm going to turn off the burn dodge layer. So what would happen if my texture was underneath the image? So I have to get I just did Command J there to duplicate my background so I could drag it up above the texture. And I'm going to set my texture to normal. So what would happen if I did it opposite? What if I, did my image on top of my texture? It would still work to blend. Oh, something's wonky's going on here. Oh, that's still a multiply. So what if it would still work as a blend? Something's still wonky here.
Is it the layer mask on the texture?
Yes, probably so. Thank you.
No worries.
All right. I'm going to, in fact, just flatten this, pretend like we had the texture underneath there. So someone asked, does layer matter? The layer order matter, and it does, because even though we could still do multiply, I have no way to take my texture off because you have to be able to
of course,
layer mask and put the texture. So I can't take texture off. So layer order does matter. I would start with layer your image first and then put your textures on top. Now, there are cases where that's not important, but for the most part, follow that order.
I love it. Leslie, let me just share a comment with you super quickly because this makes me really happy. Lucia says, I haven't done anything for 3 weeks because I just couldn't pull myself together. And although this live is running just for a short time, I already feel like doing something again. Creativity comes back.
Awesome.
How happy does that make you?
Great.
Yeah. And that's exactly why we've been trying to do more and more of these live sessions, because everyone's stuck at home. We all need that creative outlet. And I think it's so important right now.
Yeah, it's really great to be able to just get together today and do this.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
All right. Okay, I'm going to go back to, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and I'm going to talk about kind of effects in general and more about blend modes. Okay, so I talked about the multiply blend mode, which works great with these images that have a white background or a very light background. But let's say we have an image like this, photograph I took of lilac. This is the original photograph. Textures can also be used to, oh, actually, let me back up here a little bit. I like to think of textures as either enhancing or adding to. Textures can be used to enhance an image. So here I've just applied a texture and it enhances what's there. And it can be used to add to your artwork. Like in this case, adding a texture kind of adds another artistic element to it actually becomes part of the image. All right. Sorry for hopping around there, but we're back to this.
All good.
Now, in this case, usually you're going to be using soft light and overlay.
Yep.
And I'm just going to open that up real quick to give you a peek at that. Okay, I had a lot of layers I was playing around with on this one. Let's look at this. Let me turn off the texture for a minute. So I've placed kind of a painterly texture. This one's from the Tableau collection. I kind of like, let's zoom in a bit too. So usually when you're kind of enhancing an image, you want to apply some, like a little bit of tone and texture. Soft light or overlay tend to work best with that. Overlay gives you more saturation, more contrast. You usually want to use maybe a little bit less opacity on that. And
I
on
love
this
overlay,
soft
but
light,
soft light can be so beautiful, can't it, as well?
and you're usually not using those at 100%. It's usually like a lower blend mode. And again, on the blend mode chart, those are down here in the contrast saturation area. Overlay and soft light are going to be the ones you're using most with these kind of images. And also a note about the actual image. Oh, and by the way, another note here, there's no layer mask on this. Sometimes you need a layer mask and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. So do you find sometimes almost through serendipity, it just fits perfectly?
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, that's a good point, because if you find you're struggling with the texture and you have to like make, really mask your layer mask, it might not be the right texture. You might be fighting too hard. When you're fighting too hard with the texture, it's probably a good sign that you should try different texture.
Yeah, definitely. You shouldn't have to fight it.
Right. Okay, and now I'm gonna show you an example of using screen. Let's look at that bigger here. So this is my original image. And again, textured images usually work best when there's a lot of nice blur in the image. So, and you get that blur from shallow depth of field. Now this is using screen blend mode. And screen is great when you want kind of a matte, really soft matte look. And maybe there's a little bit of texture showing. I don't know if you guys can see that in the video. It's pretty subtle. And I'll open that one up real quickly as well. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can you see that a little bit better now?
Yeah. Subtle, but really nice.
Yeah, and here's the original. So it's great for having kind of a matte look. And actually the interesting thing is that usually darker textures work better in screen mode.
Oh, really?
A lot of times, yeah. I usually choose this one was from the Textures 2 collection. It's the Netherlandish texture, so it's quite dark. But when you use it on screen, it's quite light because it gives a very light effect.
So it's kind of it's hiding that darker vignette, isn't it?
Yeah. So those are your typical blend modes for using with photos. Go back over here. It's going to be multiply, overlay, soft light, and sometimes screen. That doesn't mean you can't use other things with photographs, but you're more likely to use those. I'm going to show you a couple of quick examples where I didn't use those. Here is a photograph I took of my blue Weimaraner, Ellie. She's gone to the Rainbow Bridge now. She was my heart song.
Oh no, she's so sweet.
And this one I used luminosity. I'm going to open up that real quick. Cancel that. I don't want to make any changes. My original image was color, and then I changed it to black and white and with a little bit of a sepia tone to it. And then I used this is also a texture from the Textures Volume 1 collection. And I wanted her to really kind of be emerging from the texture, like almost like fog.
Mm-hmm.
Now I could have used normal, and normal would almost do the same thing. And I do use normal sometime, but I chose luminosity because luminosity will keep the color of the image below it, of the layers below it. You'll get the luminosity of the top layer with the tones of the bottom layer.
I think it's great to have an understanding of how all the blend modes work, but at the same time, I generally just cycle through all of them when I'm working with textures until I just go, is that better or worse, better or worse? And I just go through an order and pick my favorite.
And that's that's really important in texture work, is to just play. You just want to play and see what happens. Try a weird texture, try a weird blend mode that you haven't tried before, because you can come up with really surprising results.
Yeah, you just have to play and experiment.
And this one was interesting. This is an image I took against black in the studio. And I just wanted to give it, I love this kind of images. I love the pop against black, but I kind of wanted to just give it a little bit of texture. Just a little something.
Really beautiful though. That adds so much.
I'm going to open that one up and let you take a peek at what I did there, because it's a different blend mode. Zoom in a little bit on that. I chose a pretty dark texture. This is go back over here to my textures. It is the Bibliotech texture from the Textures one, which is a pretty dark texture. And I knew it had a lot of dark texture on the outside. There's two versions of that texture. So I knew that combined, and I also darkened it a little bit too. I darkened my texture a little bit using that burn and dodge layer. This is one case where I didn't use the gray fill. I just did it on a blank layer.
And you know what you've learned in this lesson so far, everyone, in terms of blend modes and masking and dodge and burn, those three tools are your best friend. You can use them over and over and over again and just create infinite amounts of incredible work. Right, Leslie?
Right, yeah. So here's the interesting thing about this one. The blend mode is lighter color. Because, my flower, the only thing that's light on there is the flower. And my texture itself is really dark in the middle. Just choosing lighter color, boom. There's texture, no layer mask needed. So you can use other blend modes, and I encourage you to play around and try. I gave you these ones as kind of a nice starting place, a nice understanding for a starting place. Okay, how are we doing on time?
We're pretty good, actually. Yeah, doing good.
Okay, let's
see.
And
maybe this is a great juncture just to pause and say, let us know what you think so far, guys, in the comments. Let us know, is this helpful so far? Are you enjoying some of the techniques? Are you feeling inspired to do some texture work yourself? We'd love to hear.
That gives me a chance to get some water too.
Yeah, I've got my pineapple bottle going on today.
All right. Everyone ready to go to using multiple textures?
Yes, definitely. And yeah, all the comments are coming in now. So people are saying, very inspired, pace is perfect. Yeah, wonderful. So
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, people want to try some new techniques as well, which is great.
Okay, so I showed you this how to do texture this when we chose the Sentier Forestier texture for that, if you remember. Now, the way I actually first created this texture was I used a different texture. I actually created the Sentier Forestier from my texturing this image, and that'll become clearer as I demonstrate. So I'm going to go back and show you how I used two textures to actually get that. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to jump ahead here. I'm just going to open up a file that I already have prepared. So I already have textures prepared here. This is how I actually first created this image. So I have my texture, my image here, my flower image. I have my burn dodge layer, and this is before I was using the gray fills. You can see it's just a clear layer, but I did have burning dodger. If I turn it off, you can see there's some burning and dodging on the petals in the middle. And then I chose this texture, even though it seems kind of weird, because I kind of liked this vignetting the green here. And I thought, well, let me just try this out. But obviously, well, for me, I wouldn't want this purple color. So I first changed the lightness of it. I've already showed you guys how to put on these adjustment layers here. So I used levels to basically give that more contrast. And then I used another clipping mask with adjustment layer to change the hue saturation. So I started getting the purple color out of there. I think I went to, let's see, which layer was that? I should have written that down.
You can lose track so easily, can't you?
It was the master hue. I did -7. So this is where it was.
Can I ask, Leslie, are you organized with your layers? Because I feel like there's two types of people. There is the new layer 5.5, and then there's the beautifully named and organized layers person.
I'm very organized with my layers. Everything is
I thought
labeled,
so.
grouped, labeled, and I also, you can see right here, I use the notes tool a lot because you're going to forget, 2 months from now, 5 months from now, you're going to forget edits that you made. So I use the note tool as well. So I put different notes to myself of things I might have done. Like here, I put notes in my layers, topaz detail, feature tweaked. So I use the topaz detail for that, burn and dodge. And I usually put, actually, I know my textures, I didn't put the texture name on here, but if it was someone else's texture or someone else's graphic asset, I would put down who that was and what the texture was. And that is one of the benefits when you place an image, it gives you the file number when you place it. But I'm so used to writing down things on my layers anyway, that's not a big deal to me to write it down.
We have a few people in the chat asking about the notes tool. Do you mind just showing that super quick?
Notes are over here underneath the eyedropper tool. If you click the eyedropper tool, come down here to note, and then you can just clip anywhere and put a note. And the note comes up, and then you can type whatever you want.
Is this a new feature? Because I don't think I've ever.
As long as I can remember, having a great time in the Hangout. You can put whatever you want in the notes.
I feel you're making me feel like a Photoshop newbie today, Leslie, because there's so many of these things where I'm like, I don't think I've ever used that.
Well, Tom, if you were doing the presentation, I'd probably be saying that. I'd be going, oh,
you're,
I didn't know that.
You're too kind. I don't know about that. You're the texture expert.
Well, if someone else was doing a demonstration in something I don't do very often, I don't know every single shortcut. I know the ones for textures and general Photoshop. And you can move those notes around. Whoops. Moved the wrong thing there. Okay. All right. So I'm showing you here that how I actually did this. This is where I started way back when. And I actually didn't want to change the hue of the green that much. So you can see here that I wanted a little bit of purple there. So you can mask those adjustment layers. There's a mask I put on the hue saturation. But that's looking kind of cold. And I wasn't really getting the effect I wanted in hue saturation. And I also am kind of losing texture here. So at some point, I don't remember now why, I added another texture. This is another texture from the textures one. And it is, I think that's the Tufo. Let's see. That one is the, yes, Tufo. It's a type of stone in France, what they build the castles with in this region.
It's very pretty.
Photoshop. And then I selected multiply again. Now I'm showing you the file that I already did. So I'm also on that layer. I put a layer mask. If I take off that layer mask for a minute, you can see what that is. I really brightened that up. This is the layer mask that I put on there. It's not totally covering the flower. And then I think I also made an adjustment to that texture. I brightened it using one of those a levels adjustment layer. And I even did a little bit of a layer mask on that, just a little bit. So I didn't want it brightened in that area on the outside edge. So that's actually how I got that image. I used two textures. And then when I finished this, I thought, oh, that's kind of a neat texture. And I saved that as a texture and added it to the collection.
How many textures do you think you have in your collection, Leslie?
I don't know.
Thousands?
Gosh, I don't know. Thousands, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for textures. I just think they are art in their own right. I see some textures that are so beautiful you could put it on a canvas.
And that's why I love creating textures too, because creating them is half the fun. You know, it's artwork too. And another thing I did
really
here is I grouped my textures. I usually put my textures in a group, and that allows me to do different. One thing, it keeps my layer panel tidy. I'm going to collapse the group. Anyone lost on that, on creating a group?
I'm familiar with groups, but would you mind kind of showing it super slow maybe for people?
Let's see. I'm going to go back to the other when we were demonstrating. And let's just go ahead and I'm going to drag that other layer over here. So we have two textures over here. I'm going to quickly drag that over because it'll be easier to show you here. I'm not sure why that's going wonky. Oh, I know why, because I'm doubling up on my. You could even group one. You can have a group of one. It's basically putting layers into a folder. So you select the layers you want to put into a folder. I'm going to select the texture and the adjustment layer and do Command or Control G, which will group it. And it just kind of keeps your layer panel tidy. And you'd want to, maybe label that as well. So textures.
Leslie, we have several people saying how much they'd love a class on creating textures. Have you ever thought about something like that?
Definitely in the plans, yeah. I was thinking I would probably do that maybe late summer, early fall.
Incredible. Well, if you're willing, we'd love to have you back on to demonstrate that process because, I adore your textures. I'd love to see how they come to life.
I could do a little demo, but actually creating textures would be a full-on 4-week class, 4 6 weeks
class. Yeah. Maybe like a mini segment, just showing some of the process or something.
Figure out a mini session. Okay, so back to grouping textures, and then the other benefit of grouping things is that you can use a double layer mask. You can put a layer mask on your group, so then you could do some more masking if you wanted to. Let's say I like this masking, but I kind of want to see, well, maybe I want to try out doing a layer mask that blocks, reveals more. So I select my brush here and I'm in my layer mask. Whoop, I'm on the wrong place here. I'm on the layer mask of the group. Sorry about that. I accidentally went into Refine Edge. All right. We're on the layer mask of the group. I have my brush selected. I have black selected as my foreground. It's 20% opacity, and I'm going to do some more masking. So you could just keep on masking if you wanted to see what it would look like to reveal more of that flower, let's say. Or maybe you want to reveal more of the stem. And then if you're not sure, you could toggle, you could hit Shift. Shift hides a layer mask. So I'm going to hit Shift and hit the layer mask. And that takes away. It's pretty subtle what I did, so you probably can't even see it. Anyway, so going back to my other demo file, so that's what I did here on my multiple texture file. I grouped the textures and I kept on doing layer masks, so it's a little bit brighter. Okay, I'm gonna take a breather here and kind of see if we have any questions about using multiple textures rather.
Yeah, perfect. So what I would say is if people could use the ask a question feature below this live stream, I know we have a bunch of questions there from the first session that got rescheduled, which are kind of taking up a lot of space. So if you have a question or you see a question that you would love to see answered, please upvote it, and that's going to bring it to the top so we can find it more easily. So if everyone can just pause for a second, go and ask a question, and then upvote any questions that they'd like Leslie to answer, that would be a super helpful way for us to see those.
I will answer a question I know was from last week. Someone asked me, how do you sell this type of photography? How do you sell this type of artwork? And that's certainly a question near and dear to all artists. It's a little bit off topic of textures, but I'll do a quick answer to that one. My teacher, Ted Orland, had a poster that he created. It was a photograph of Ansel Adams photographing a classroom of children. And the caption he put was, even Ansel Adams has to earn a living. And now, I'm not saying you can't make a living off of this kind of artwork, but for myself personally, I don't even really try because I'm, one, really busy with French Kiss, and two, it's very satisfying to me that I have a career where I can create my art, but how I actually make my money right now is providing a service to people. I'm providing a service of providing graphic assets and that I create, and I'm creating art. So my advice to people is to think about maybe choosing a career that combines passions. You know, Tom, I'm sure that your first passion is art in general, but you've created a business where you're also serving people. You're serving people, you know, with these tutorials, with providing graphic assets from different vendors.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm thinking of like maybe Topaz Labs or other filters. You know, I don't know what their expertise was. Their first passion is photography and creating art, but they're providing a service for people, and that's how they probably make, you know, their money. So you could make money off your art, but to do that, you have to become super savvy at marketing. There are some really good courses on like doing Facebook ads, like really targeted Facebook ads, very sophisticated things, using print on demand and targeted ads. But in general, so if you're willing to do the heavy marketing, go for it, or think about combining passions. For me, what I do now combines my passion of creating art, gardening, florals, and teaching, and I'm pretty happy with that.
I think you found a good combination. I realize, yeah, it's a departure from textures. I'm very happy as well, just to give two super quick tips on the selling art front, because this is something I help a lot of people with. But I think often it can help to focus your artwork you're trying to sell around a specific topic or subject, and something that people really feel very deeply about. So if there are very visibly groups of people, you know, look for Facebook groups and things like that, where there's thousands of people geeking out and loving and being passionate around a subject, that's a good sign there might be a demand for art there. If it's something where they're more apathetic, they don't have a strong feeling towards it, you're going to struggle to sell it. And so something like, you know, dogs and pets, horses. I've got a friend who's really, really killing it right now, selling art around motorcycles, Star Wars. Like, it doesn't, you know, something people really care about. And when you focus around that, you know, people buy the art because it's an extension of their identity, as opposed to something that they just don't feel that strongly around.
Those are great points, and it also has to do with, you know, combining passions, like you said here. Of, you know, if you're a dog lover, which I'm actually a dog lover too, maybe become a pet portraits or dog events, It's great to combine passions and focus on a market. Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. We have a few more questions coming in actually. So Susan asked about how to keep so many textures organized, making them easier to sort through.
Oh, right. One thing, to keep your textures in the original folders, I think, organize them by the creator, the graphic creator, and their collections. It's really helpful to have a program like Bridge where you can easily browse. Like I never, ever use the Finder. I just never try and find things from the Finder. It's just too hard. I love Bridge. I can't live without Bridge. And the other thing to do is to use Lightroom and assign keywords. My textures are actually in my other Lightroom catalog because it's like my heavy production catalog, which is different than my cats are making a bunch of noise. My textures happen to be in a different Lightroom catalog because it's a very heavy production oriented catalog. But in my other catalog, I have all my textures keyworded by, grunge, painterly, watercolor, colors. Like this one might be a grunge texture with purple and green in the keywords. So using keywords first, keep all your textures in a folder called textures, and then sort it by the texture creator, and then by collection. So keep them in their original folders, and use something like Bridge to browse them easier.
Yep.
Or Lightroom. Lightroom rocks for doing that, for keywords.
Yeah, Lightroom's great. And Lightroom just seems so quick as well.
Yeah. I wish Lightroom would let you use multiple catalogs at once, because I would like to be able to switch back and forth, but it doesn't.
Perfect. By the way, I know a few people have pointed out there's a bit of a difference in volume, and I'm really sorry. This session has been pretty smooth overall. If anyone knows the solution to this, you will be my favorite person in the world. My input volume keeps shooting up and I keep having to drag it down or even hold it down to stop that happening. So I do apologize if that's been bugging anyone. But yeah, definitely trying our best to make it run smoothly. Leslie, I think there were a couple more questions where you saw them come in where you thought you wanted to answer them or they stood out to you?
Let's see.
And also a couple of people spotted the bunny behind me, giant fluffy bunny. So good to see him getting some love.
Oh, real quick, I don't know if we're winding down here, but I wanted to kind of give you a really quick, I'm going to go into Keynote real quick because I have a couple of slides here. This is kind of a review of things that the elements of textured photography. So you're going to want to learn about blend modes. Textures are all about blend modes. That's one. Don't try and cut out your subject, blend it. Two, you want to learn about layers and layer masks so you can work non-destructively. Adjustment layers, so you can do tweaks to your textures without destructive edits. And clipping masks so that you can constrain those adjustment layers to the texture. And then I wanted to recommend this book. Whoops, wrong thing here.
By the way, your studio is getting some love, Leslie. Everyone's loving your studio in the backdrop. Oh, I've said every time we jump on a personal call, I say how much I love your studio. It is beautiful.
Thank you. Now, I don't have any affiliation with this book, but I found this book really easy to read, really easy to follow. Like all of this stuff could seem overwhelming to someone who's beginning. Layers, The Complete Guide to Photoshop's Most Powerful Feature by Matt Kolskowski is a great book to kind of take all of this slowly at your own pace. Plus, we're going to be having more classes too.
That's perfect.
And you can always come to the Facebook groups, the Design Cut groups, and ask questions. I'll be happy, tag me. I'll be happy to come and answer any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leslie. That was, again, just a value-packed session. I know everyone's really, really enjoyed it. So if everyone shows some love for Leslie in the comments, that was incredible. And thank you so much for coming back as well after we had to reschedule after technical issues last time.
I'm going to try to come back here. Oh, I'm in the wrong browser. Sorry about that.
It's okay. We can see you fine. We can see you and the cute cat in the background.
Thanks. Thank you all for showing up, and thank you for your patience last week and coming back to this week. You're awesome.
Yeah, you are the best community in the world. Sorry for the car alarm as well. This is the this is the record from home situation that we're all in right now. But yeah, Leslie, that was such a fantastic session. And I have to mention, this is something which I think is really going to be exciting for everyone who's with us right now. We are hosting a 5-day digital scrapbooking and texturing event next week. And this is going to be running Monday 20th until the Friday. And it's going to be 5 live workshops like this, tons of deals, freebies, so much incredible stuff. We think you're going to absolutely love it. So if you want to be notified about that, make sure that you do have an account with Design Cuts. We can put a link just below this video where you can sign up and get 22 free products when you sign up. But we will absolutely notify you when the event goes live. And we're going to be welcoming back Leslie as one of the speakers.
I'm going to be talking about using overlays, and it's going to be kind of partially scrapbook kind of things, but also on your images. So if you are unsure of how to work with black and white overlays, I'm going to be covering that.
It's going to be another really, really great session. And as I say, we have Leslie, we have 4 other expert speakers joining us. So we hope that you'll check it out, go sign up. That's all kicking off on Monday. I can't wait because these live events, they're the most fun thing in the world actually right now. And like I say, there's been so much positivity with the community all hanging out together. It's been fantastic.
Oh, it's so great that you guys offer this. I think it's awesome. I mean, can you believe it? You get these free classes. It's really incredible.
Well, thank you again so much for coming on. There is a link just below this video. If you click that now, in a second, we're going to switch that link back because you should definitely check out the textures used in today's live session, in today's workshop, demonstrated so well by Leslie. So if the team could switch that green button back, that would be appreciated, please. And what is the texture pack called that you worked with, Leslie?
Mostly the textures, volume 1. So lay of textures, volume 1.
LED Textures Volume 1. The green button below this live stream, you can check out those textures.
There we go, yeah.
And have a look around Leslie's whole store because it is just wall-to-wall gorgeous textures. There's so much goodness in there. We hope that you guys love it.
Thank you so much for coming. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Leslie. We appreciate you so much. We hope everyone enjoyed it. And thank you again for joining us. And we will see you on Monday, we hope, as we start our scrapbooking and texturing event. We cannot wait to see you again.
It's been a great event.
All right. Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks, Tom.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.